Welcome to E-Pathashala. I am Dr. Saurabha, School of Graduate Studies, Jain University, Bengaluru. Today I am going to talk about critical pedagogy and the educational challenges. Critical pedagogy is the relationship between teaching and learning. Critical pedagogy is a philosophy of continuous learning, relearning, reflection, evaluation, and the impact it has on students. Critical pedagogy was first described by Paulo, Freire and then developed by Giroux and others. Paulo Freire advocates critical thinking among students. He discussed that the schooling system condemns this kind of critical, conscientious thinking. Conscientiousness and critical thinking is what he advocated, and he said, education as a system is political. Teachers and students have to be aware of this kind of politics revolving around education. A teacher comes with a bundle of political thoughts, and the way the content is taught and what is taught to the students will be becoming the political agenda in the society. Illich is another proponent of critical pedagogy. He talks about deschooling society. Deschooling society enables deinstitutionalizing the society. He talks about 4 learning networks and the use of advanced technology for the purpose of initiating what he calls as learning webs. The other proponents of critical pedagogy are Giroux. He is well known top first 50 educationists in the modern period. It is recognized by Routledge in the year 2002. He is known for his new educational paradigms, and he is also well known for his being a critic of culture. Paul Goodman is known for miseducation, so that the education system should not promote the wrong class values into the society through the students. He emphasizes and promotes alternative educational paradigms, which includes the city being a school, farm becoming a school, and he initiates the informal relationships through which learning happens in an informal setting. It need not be the school, because school is a lengthy process which enables only few students in a society to understand and become capable members of a society. Let us understand the contributions of these critical pedagogy specialists in the forthcoming module. Critical pedagogy includes relationships between teaching and learning. Its proponents claim that it is a continuous process of what they call unlearning, learning and relearning, reflection, evaluation, and the impact that these actions have on students. Critical pedagogy is a philosophy of education and social movement that combines education with critical theory. First described by Paulo Freire, it has since been developed by Giroux and others as a praxis-oriented educational movement guided by passion and principle to help students develop consciousness of freedom, recognize authoritarian tendencies, and connect knowledge to power and the ability to take constructive action. Critical pedagogy draws from critical theory, which is concerned with the idea of a just society in which people have political, economic, and cultural control of their lives. Thinkers of critical theory believe that these goals are satisfied only through emancipating oppressed people, which empowers them and enables them to transform their life conditions. It is actually the starting point for critical pedagogy. The following section highlights the contributions of Paulo Freire, Illich, Giroux, and Paul Goodman among many stalwarts who have contributed towards conceptualizing, understanding, and applying critical pedagogy, resulting in emergence of generations which are more conscious and participating citizens of the society and nation. Paul Freire. Critical pedagogy was greatly influenced by the works of Paul Freire, the most celebrated critical educator. Freire was a Brazilian educator and philosopher who was a leading advocate of critical pedagogy. He is best known for his influential work, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which is considered one of the foundational texts of the critical pedagogy movement. Freire endorses students' ability to think critically about their educational situation. This way of thinking allows them to recognize connections between their individual problems and experiences and the social context in which they are embedded. Paulo Freire contributed a philosophy of education that came not only from the more classical approaches stemming from Plato, but also from more modern Marxist and anti-colonialist thinkers. In Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Freire, reprising the oppressor-oppressed distinction, differentiates between the positions in an unjust society, the oppressor and the oppressed. Freire champions that education should not allow the oppressed to regain that sense of humility, in turn overcoming their condition. Nevertheless, he acknowledges that for this to occur, the oppressed individuals must play a role in their liberation. Likewise, the oppressors must be willing to rethink their way of life and to examine their own role in the oppression if true liberation is to occur. Freire believed education to be a political act that could not be divorced from pedagogy. Freire defined this as a main tenet of critical pedagogy. Teachers and students must be made aware of the politics that surround education. The way students are taught and the way they are taught serves a political agenda. Critical consciousness or conscientization is a popular education and social concept developed by Paulo Freire, grounded in post-Marxist critical theory. Critical consciousness focuses on achieving an in-depth understanding of the world, allowing for the perception and exposure of social and political contradictions. Critical consciousness includes taking action against the oppressive elements in one's life that are illuminated by that understanding. Banking model of education. In terms of pedagogy, Freire is best known for his attack on what he called the banking concept of education, in which the student was viewed as an empty account to be filled by the teacher. He notes that it transforms students into receiving objects. The banking model of education attempts to control thinking and action of students, thus leading men and women to adjust to the world and inhibiting their creative power. Freire's work updated the concept and placed it in the context with current theories and practices of education, laying the foundation for what is now called critical pedagogy. Freire's praxis required implementation of a range of educational practices and processes with the goal of creating not only a better learning environment but also a better world. Freire himself maintained that this was not merely an educational technique but a way of living in our educative practice. Critical democratic theory sees education or learning as an ongoing two-way dialectic process that is built around the experiences of the student and allows for critical thinking and action to help students grow. Traditional hierarchies must be broken down and teachers must also be learners, particularly learning from their students and being critically reflective about their practice to bring about conscientization. Teachers become facilitators to help students as they share experiences and learn from each other, undertake critical inquiry, and create their own plans of action. The importance of dialogue between students, teachers, administration, parents, and community must be stressed. Tension between opposing conditions, that is, subject and object, the individual and the word and the world, is seen an impetus for growth. Critical pedagogy, as outlined by Freire, must include critical and creative thinking, not just skills. The critical aspect must examine not only political issues but also issues of social justice and equity. In a culture of democracy, the dialectic nature of both critique and possibility Critical democratic pedagogy offers the opportunity for teachers and students to ask the tough questions about their lived experiences and the contradictions that they encounter. Freire's approach to learning is participatory, non-hierarchical, drawing on the learner's experiences, empowering, exposing of injustice, aiming at social and political transformation, thus became internationally known. The next proponent is Ivan Illich, another critical pedagogue known for his contributions to critical pedagogy with his work Deschooling Society. Deschooling Society is a critical discourse on education as practiced in modern economies. It is a book that brought Ivan Illich to public attention. Full of detail on programs and concerns, the book gives examples of the ineffectual nature of institutionalized education. Illich posited self-directed education supported by intentional social relations in fluid informal arrangements. Universal education through schooling is not feasible. It would be no more feasible if it were attempted by means of alternative institutions built on the style of present schools. Neither new attitudes of teachers towards the pupils nor the proliferation of educational hardware or software in the classroom, nor finally the attempt to expand the pedagogue's responsibility until it engulfs his pupils' lifetimes will deliver universal education. The current search for new educational funnels must be reversed into the search for their institutional inverse. Educational webs which heighten the opportunity for each one to transform each moment of his living into one of learning, sharing, and caring. The institutionalization of education only institutionalizes society, and conversely, ideas for deinstitutionalizing education may be a starting point for the establishment of a deinstitutionalized society. Illich argued that the use of technology to create decentralized webs could support the goal of creating a good education system. A good education system should serve three purposes. First, it should provide all who want to learn access to available resources at any time in their lives. Second, empower all who want to share what they know to find those who want to learn it from them. Third, and finally, it must provide all who want to raise an issue to the public with an opportunity to make their challenge known. Developing this idea, Illich proposes 4 learning networks. 1. Reference service to educational objects. It is an open directory of educational resources and their availability to learners. 2. Skills exchange. It is a database of people willing to list their skills and the basis on which they would be prepared to share or swap them with others. 3. Peer matching. A network helping people to communicate their learning activities and aims in order to find similar learners who may wish to collaborate. 4. Directory of professional educators. A list of professionals, paraprofessionals, and freelancers detailing their qualifications, services, and the terms on which these are made available. Illich claims that it is patently false to claim that most learning is the result of teaching. On the contrary, the teacher in a modern school is in fact acting in 3 roles: as a custodian of society's rituals, as a therapist, and as a preacher. He proposes that instead of a learning society, a system must be created in which skill training is widely available and divested of the ritualistic elements of schooling, and where citizens freely associate to develop a critical education, perhaps guided by masters. Illich sees in modern schools a false myth of salvation. He points to the fact that how much ever money is poured into public schooling, it always requires more and the outputs do not decrease. It is like chasing the myth of unlimited progress. He sees educational credentials as an element in this. One gets credentials to enter on to the next level, but credentials don't measure competence so much as attendance at a school. He also analyzes the multiple and total roles of the teacher in this enclosed institution. The teacher has three roles: custodian, therapist, and preacher. School has much more to it than learning. It has many roles: creche, socialization, keeping young people out of the workforce, training in the acceptance of the values of consumerism and obedience, and so on. Illich's practical vision for learning in a de-schooled society is built around what he calls learning webs. Illich envisages three types of learning exchange: between a skills teacher and a student, between people themselves engaging in critical discourse, and between a master practitioner, and a student. Illich considers the deinstitutionalization of resources. He proposes that resources already available in society be made available for learning. Whether he is talking about skill exchanges or educational resources, Illich envisages non-hierarchical networks. The professionals in Illich's vision are the facilitators of these exchanges and not the distributors of approved knowledge packages in the school system. He envisages two types of professional educators: those who operate the resource centers and facilitate skill exchanges, and those who guide others in how to use these systems and networks. In conclusion, Illich points out that the school is not the only modern institution whose main purpose is to shape people's view of reality. Other factors contribute to this. Factors related to social origins and family surroundings, the media, and informal socialization networks. These, amongst others, are key elements in molding behavior and values. But he considers that it is the school that is most deeply and systematically enslaving. It alone is entrusted with the task of forming critical judgment, a task that paradoxically it tries to carry out by ensuring that learning, whether about oneself, about others, or about nature, follows a predetermined pattern. The next proponent is Henry Giroux, another advocate of critical pedagogy. He was born in 1943, is an American and Canadian scholar and a cultural critic. He is one of the founding theorists of critical pedagogy in the US. He is best known for his pioneering work in public pedagogy, cultural studies, youth studies, higher education, media studies, and critical theory. In 2002, Routledge named Giroux as one of the top 50 educational thinkers of the modern period. Giroux has been an important contributor to a variety of academic fields, including critical pedagogy. His work draws from a number of theoretical traditions extending from Marx to Freire to Goodman. He is also an advocate of radical democracy, vigorously opposing the anti-democratic tendencies of neoliberalism, militarism, imperialism, religious fundamentalism, and the ongoing attacks against the social state and the social wage, youth, the poor, and public and higher education. Giroux's most recent work focuses on public pedagogy, a term he coined to describe the nature of the spectacle and the new media and the political and educational force of global culture. The most important theme in critical pedagogy, according to Giroux, is the belief that education systems are political. To Giroux, it is essential to make everyday experience problematic and critical by revealing its hidden political assumptions. He maintains that this critical understanding, by empowering students to develop the courage to participate in their self-formation, has a liberatory purpose. He also asserts that higher education should engage in political education by teaching students to take risk, challenge those with power, honor critical traditions, and be reflective about how authority is used in the classroom. The next proponent is Paul Goodman. He is the one who critiqued the stereotypical systems of education. Goodman was an American novelist, playwright, poet, psychotherapist, although now best known as a social critic anarchist philosopher, and public intellectual. Compulsory Miseducation is a critique of American public schools written by Paul Goodman and published by Horizon Press in the year 1964. Already established as a social critic of American society and the role of its youth in his previous book, Growing Up Absurd, Goodman argues in Compulsory Miseducation against the necessity of schools for the socialization of youth and recommends their abolition. He suggests that formal education lasts too long, teaches the wrong social, cultural, class values, and increasingly damages students over time. Goodman writes that the school reflects the misguided and insincere values of a society, and thus school reformers should focus on these values before schools. He proposes a variety of alternatives to school, including no school, the city or farm as a school, apprenticeship, guided travel, and youth organizations. Goodman's book was a precursor to the work of deschooling advocate Ivan Illich. In Compulsory Miseducation, Goodman also argues against the social necessity of American public schools and mandatory attendance requirements. Goodman criticizes the structure of academic curriculum and connects it with programmed instruction and schooling that emaciates the mind proportional with time. Goodman sees schools as mechanisms for adjusting youth to an automated society increasingly absent any human values. Goodman disagrees with those who say public schools teach middle-class values, as he sees schools as more petite bourgeoisie than bourgeoisies. Goodman then asserts that lower and middle-class kids would be better off without public or any schooling altogether. He proposes several alternatives to formal schooling, such as have no school at all for a few classes. Other proposals include making class non-compulsory, such that attendance will reflect student interest without trapping children, requiring students to wait 2 years before applying to the most elite colleges, eliminating grades so the burden of testing for required skills fall on companies, and letting students quit and resume freely. He proposes Danish folk school style education for those uninterested in academics. Goodman's foremost intention was to stimulate new educational paradigms. To conclude, the important theme in critical pedagogy is that education is political by nature. One has to de-school, one has to de-institutionalize to understand the real socio-cultural realities in a society, and it also talks about how a teacher has to be a facilitator, and the teacher also has to take the role of custodian, therapist, preacher, and as a facilitator they have to not only deliver the packages given by the structured systems but also destructure themselves by giving the essential knowledge and the skills and capabilities to survive in a competitive society.